The station hung in space like a jewel on black velvet, its metal rings slowly rotating under the dim light of the dying star. Inside, the grand hall was alive with tension. Representatives from 20 alien worlds sat at polished tables shaped in a perfect circle, their voices low, their eyes wary. Today was supposed to be the day a fragile peace was signed between two rival empires whose fleets waited just beyond the system, ready to burn whole planets if talks failed. Every being in that chamber knew the treaty could save billions or doom them. The hum of conversation broke when the docking siren sounded. All eyes turned toward the massive entry doors. From the far end of the corridor came the faint echo of boots on metal. First through the doorway stepped a woman in a dark, diplomatic uniform, her black hair tied neatly back, her pace calm and measured. The alien delegates recognized her immediately, Ambassador Layla Cortez of Earth, known for her unshakable composure and dangerous honesty. But it wasn't her presence that sent ripples through the crowd. It was the figure who followed her. He was taller than most alien guards present, clad head to toe in matte black armor that caught no light. His face was hidden behind a visor that gave off no reflection. There were no rank marks, no weapons in sight. Only the faint sound of his footsteps and the quiet hiss of his breathing through the helmet. The way he moved was unsettling. Wasted motion, no glances to the side, no sign he cared who was watching. He stayed one step behind the ambassador, his hands empty, but somehow dangerous. Whispers began immediately. Some delegates exchanged nervous glances. A few smirked, seeing the single human bodyguard as a sign of arrogance. Others muttered about insult. Why would Earth send only one protector to such a volatile meeting? Did they think the station was safe? Or did they believe no one here could threaten them? From a balcony above, two alien security officers watched the pair cross the floor. One of them leaned closer and whispered, "Is that the only guard she brought?" The other shrugged but didn't take his eyes off the man in black. "Maybe they think one human is enough," he said quietly, unknown to most in the hall. One else was watching too, but not from a place of curiosity. In a hidden maintenance room 2 levels down, a group of armed mercenaries stared at a live feed of the docking corridor. Their leader, a reptilian veteran with scarred scales, narrowed his eyes at the sight of the human. That, he hissed, was not in the briefing. They said she'd be alone with station security. A second mercenary, younger and eager, laughed. "One soldier in black? It doesn't matter. We'll take him first." The leader didn't answer. He kept staring at the human's visor as if trying to see what lay beneath. Something about the way the man moved set off an instinct the old warrior had learned never to ignore. Back in the hall, Ambassador Cortez reached the center table. She stopped, rested her hands lightly on the polished surface, and nodded to the assembly. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice steady. "Earth thanks you for allowing us to witness this historic moment. We come not to take sides, but to ensure these talks end in peace, not war." As she spoke, the bodyguard remained silent, scanning the room without moving his head. Through the visor, faint symbols flickered a private interface only he could see. His gaze slid over every exit, every balcony, every shadow where a threat might hide. He could hear the hum of energy weapons concealed beneath robes, could tell by the way certain hands twitched, who was already preparing for violence. Above, in the observation gallery, a thin alien in ceremonial robes leaned toward his aide. "I don't like this," he murmured. "The humans. They send someone like him? Why?" The aide gave a small shrug. "Maybe he's only here for show," but the diplomat's golden eyes narrowed. "No, he's here for something else." Far below, in that hidden maintenance room, the mercenaries moved. Small devices were placed on the station's inner bulkheads, disruptors designed to blind the security grid. One by one, cameras went dark. Station's automated defenses went into standby without anyone in the hall noticing. The mercenaries had planned this for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment when all leaders would be in one place. The plan was simple. Strike fast, take hostages. Force the treaty to collapse on, let war erupt. Ambassador Cortez finished her opening words. But even before she sat, she felt it. A subtle shift in the air. A soundless warning. She glanced toward her bodyguard. The man in black did not speak. He didn't even look at her. But there was the smallest movement, barely a tilt of his head enough for her to know something was wrong. She turned back to the table, hiding her change in expression. "Let us continue," she said, her voice as smooth as before. Only those watching closely might have noticed the faint tightening around her eyes. The man in black took a single, almost casual step toward the nearest exit. Somewhere deep in the station, a muffled click echoed through the maintenance tunnels. A red light blinked once on the mercenary leader's wrist display. The first charge was armed, and then the floor trembled. It was slight, just enough to make glasses on the table shiver. The lights flickered once. The alien guards on the edge of the hall exchanged glances. Then came the second tremor, heavier, followed by the sharp bark of shouted orders in a language half the assembly didn't understand. From the corridor behind the main doors came a metallic thud, then another closer. Faster. Someone in the crowd stood suddenly, tail lashing. "What's happening?" The ambassador didn't answer, was already turning slightly toward her bodyguard. He was still, but every muscle in his frame seemed ready to move. The visor tilted toward the main doors. Then the first explosion ripped through the air. The blast wasn't large enough to destroy the hall, but it was enough to shake the walls and fill the air with the sting of burned metal. Delegates scrambled from their seats, voices rising into a chaotic chorus of shouts and alarms. The shimmering treaty table flickered as its holographic display stuttered and died. A deep hum rolled through the floor, an unnatural vibration, like the station itself had been struck. In the confusion, security personnel moved to form a shield around the alien leaders. Weapons were drawn, some crackling with blue plasma, others humming with kinetic energy rounds. Yet amid the noise, one figure moved with almost unsettling calm, the human bodyguard. Rook, as some would later learn his call sign to be, stepped forward just enough to place himself between Ambassador Cortez and the main doors. His head turned slightly, visor scanning, pulling in data invisible to anyone else. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. It was the first time he had spoken since arriving on the station. His voice was calm but heavy with authority, the kind that made people obey without thinking. On the far side of the hall, an alien general barked orders into a wrist communicator. "Seal the chamber. Get the station guard." But his words cut off as the massive main doors shuddered under a second impact, then a third. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. Every guard in the room turned toward the entrance. High above, in the dark corners of the observation deck, two mercenaries moved into position, carried compact rifles designed for close quarters, their scopes glowing faint red. One had a clear shot toward the ambassador, but as his finger tightened on the trigger, something strange happened. His targeting reticle flickered, scrambled, then died. His rifle powered down completely. He stared at it in confusion, not noticing the black visor below tilt ever so slightly. In his direction, Rook's visor displayed dozens of moving shapes. Through walls and smoke, mercenaries advancing in a coordinated pattern. The disruption to the security grid wasn't complete. His personal systems were still reading everything. He could see the leader moving toward the rear doors, clearly aiming to cut off escape. They thought they were in control. They were wrong. Smoke rolled through the shattered doorway, curling upward toward the high ceiling. The alien delegates froze where they sat, some with their hands raised, others reaching for concealed weapons. Through the haze came dark shapes, mercenaries in mismatched armor, faces hidden behind breath masks, weapons glowing with charged energy. They moved in fast, shouting commands in a harsh, clipped language, their boots pounding on the marble floor. The peace talks were over before they had even begun. Rook stepped forward without hesitation. His visor swept the attackers, reading heat signatures, measuring the angle of each weapon, predicting lines of fire before a trigger was even pulled. He moved faster than the eye could follow, one moment standing in front of Ambassador Cortez. The next, intercepting the first plasma bolt in mid-flight with a quick pivot, letting it sear harmlessly into his armor. The impact left a smoking mark. But he didn't slow. The alien guards tried to form a defensive line, but their training couldn't match the sudden chaos. A tall insectoid delegate screamed as a blast hit the table beside him, showering splinters of synthetic wood into the air. Panic spread like fire, half the room diving for cover, the other half too frozen to move. In the confusion, Rook pushed the ambassador toward the inner side of the chamber, his left hand firm on her shoulder, his right already snapping in two. A precise strike at the nearest attacker. The mercenary staggered back, armor dented inward, where Rook's punch landed. He didn't fall until Rook twisted his wrist, used the momentum, and sent him crashing into two more behind him. The move took less than a heartbeat. More shots lit the air with blue-white flashes. Rook ducked low, grabbed a fallen attacker's weapon, and tossed it across the hall, not to use, but to bait another mercenary into breaking formation. The trap worked. The moment the enemy lunged for the weapon, Rook was there, driving a knee into his side and slamming him into the floor. So hard his breath mask cracked. In the observation gallery above, alien leaders watched in stunned disbelief. The human wasn't just defending, he was dismantling the attack, one target at a time, with brutal efficiency. His movements were fluid, each one calculated to disable rather than kill. But no less terrifying for it, the mercenary leader still. Near the back, snarled orders, "Take the diplomat," he barked in his native tongue. Two attackers broke off from the fight, circling toward Cortez. Rook caught the shift instantly. He moved so fast that one moment he was grappling an enemy. The next, he was standing between the ambassador and her would-be kidnappers. One of them raised his plasma rifle. Rook didn't give him the chance. A twist of the wrist, a downward strike, and the weapon clattered to the floor. The other attacker tried to slash with a blade. Rook caught his arm mid-swing, pulled him forward, and used his own momentum to send him tumbling into a table with a bone-snapping crack. Gasps rose from the surviving delegates. They had all heard rumors about human soldiers' tenacity, resilience, strange biology that let them survive wounds that would kill others. But seeing it here against armed mercenaries was different. This wasn't just stubbornness. This was precision. This was control. Rook didn't speak a single word, didn't shout threats or taunts. His silence made him even more unnerving, like a storm with no thunder, only the sudden strike of lightning. Within seconds, 3 attackers lay unconscious on the marble floor, 2 more groaning in pain. And yet more kept coming. The mercenary leader's tail lashed furiously. "He's only one man," he spat. "Overwhelm him." They tried, it didn't work. The marble floor was slick with smoke residue and the faint shimmer of discharged plasma. The mercenaries kept pressing, shouting in frustration, their boots clanging against the metal steps as more poured in from the corridor. The delegates had scattered into alcoves and behind overturned tables, eyes wide as they watched the lone humans stand against the storm. Then something changed. Rook stopped moving for just a breath. He stood straight, head tilted slightly as if listening to something no one else could hear. The mercenaries hesitated, confused by the pause. Ambassador Cortez's eyes flickered toward him. She knew what was coming. With one smooth motion, Rook reached up and released the seals on his helmet. A hiss escaped as pressure equalized. The visor lifted, revealing his face for the first time, calm, expressionless, but marked by faint lines of metallic circuitry glowing beneath his skin. The implants pulsed with a steady rhythm, the light running in sharp patterns along his jaw, neck, and temples. It was not decoration, it was a warning. Some of the mercenaries faltered. They had heard whispers about the Terran-augmented guardians, but most thought they were exaggerated myths, ghost stories told to frighten rookies. Seeing one in the flesh, eyes sharp as steel and moving with predator focus, made the air suddenly heavier. The glow in Rook's implants brightened. Inside his mind, battle calculations streamed at impossible speed. Trajectory paths, weak points, in armor, predicted timing of enemy fire. Every detail danced in front of him like a map only he could read. The first mercenary lunged. Rook didn't step back, he stepped forward. His left hand locked on the attacker's wrist, twisted, and disarmed him before the weapon's trigger could finish its click. His right elbow slammed into the man's chest plate, denting it inward. Before shoving him directly into the path of another's plasma shot, sparks burst as the armor absorbed the blast. A second came from behind, swinging a vibroblade. Without turning his head, Rook caught the attacker's arm, spun it around, and drove the blade into the floor where it stuck, quivering. He kicked the mercenary away with enough force to send him crashing into the wall. Now the implants were fully lit, the glow running down his spine under the armor like a burning fuse. Rook reached to his side, tapped a panel on his gauntlet, and the sound of the station's security grid powering back on roared faintly in the background. In the same motion, he remotely locked all exit doors. The mercenaries had no way out. They realized too late they weren't hunting a diplomat's guard. They were prey in a sealed arena. The leader roared in defiance and charged. Rook met him halfway, sidestepping at the last instant and using the alien's own momentum to slam him into the ground with bone-rattling force. The leader tried to riz Rook's boot, pinned him down effortlessly. Another mercenary fired wildly, plasma bolts cutting the air in sizzling streaks. Rook weaved between them like water around stone, closing the gap in 3 steps. A sharp strike to the chest, another to the helmet, and the mercenary dropped without a sound. The gallery above was silent now. No one dared move. Even those who hated Earth the most could not deny what they were seeing. A single human dismantling an elite strike team, using nothing but precision, speed, and sheer control. One of the younger mercenaries panicked, throwing down his weapon and trying to run. The locked doors denied him, the metal hissing as his fists pounded uselessly against it. Rook didn't chase. He didn't need to. Fear was already spreading through the survivors faster than any weapon could, and still, Rook said nothing. His breathing was calm. His eyes scanned for the last threats. But his stance made it clear this fight was already over. In less than 4 minutes, the grand chamber was filled with the sound of groans from the defeated and the sharp echoing steps of Rook walking back to stand behind Ambassador Cortez. His visor dangled from his left hand. The glow from his implants slowly dimmed, like a predator sheathing its claws. The galaxy's leaders now understood Earth had not sent a guard to protect the ambassador. Earth had sent a message. The smoke still clung to the air, curling and thin. Threads above the fallen. Tables lay overturned, the marble floor marked with scorch lines, and the dents of heavy impacts. The alien delegates had begun to emerge from their cover, their movements slow, as if afraid that even the slightest noise might draw the humans' attention again. Rook stood where he had stopped, directly behind Ambassador Cortez, visor still. In one hand, the faint traces of light from his implants fading beneath his skin. His presence was no longer one of silent readiness. Now it was heavier, sharper, the kind of stillness that comes after a predator has fed. Every surviving mercenary felt it. Some had already thrown down their weapons. Others simply knelt, hands clasped behind their heads. Trying not to breathe too loudly, the station's official security finally poured in through side doors. Their expressions a mix of shock and embarrassment. They began moving to secure the mercenaries, but the ambassador raised a hand. "Leave them for a moment," she said. Her voice carried the same calm weight it had before the battle began, but now, in the aftermath, it seemed almost colder. The mercenary leader groaned from where Rook had pinned him minutes earlier. Rook moved with slow, deliberate steps toward him, boots clicking against the scorched marble. Without ceremony, he reached down, gripped the leader by the collar of his damaged armor, and hauled him upright as if he weighed nothing. Then, with a measured pace, Rook walked back to the central table and dropped the alien in the middle of it. The thud echoed across the chamber. The leader's helmet had been knocked half loose, revealing eyes filled with both fury and fear. He tried to speak, but the ambassador was already speaking over him. "This man," she said, addressing the room, "was hired. Paid to do what you all saw here. It's paid to disrupt this meeting, to break your fragile peace before it had a chance to live." Murmurs rose from the delegates. Many looked to one another with thinly veiled suspicion. The ambassador let the noise grow for a moment before continuing, her tone cutting through the chamber like a blade. "We know who hired him, and so do you." Her eyes swept the two empires whose leaders sat stiff and silent. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Rook stood to the side, silent, visor dangling at his side. His gaze was fixed not on the mercenaries, but on those two leaders. They could feel it, a weight behind the stare, an unspoken warning that went far beyond the reach. "Of this single station," Earth Ambassador Cortez said slowly, "does not come to these tables to posture. We do not bring fleets to hover over your worlds. We do not send warships to intimidate you. We sent one man, and he ended your war before it began." There was a long pause. No one laughed. No one even shifted in their seat. Somewhere in the silence, the faint hum of the station's life support system felt louder than ever. She stepped closer to the table, her hands resting lightly on its edge. This was not an accident. It was a choice. We could have brought a carrier group. We could have brought 1,000 Marines. Instead, we brought one Guardian, so that you would all understand exactly what we are capable of, and exactly how. Much restraint we practice. The mercenary leader, now trembling, lowered his gaze. Whatever payment he had been promised for this mission could not have been worth the price of seeing. What one human could do, the ambassador turned slightly toward. "Rook, let them see him," she said quietly. Rook stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the central table. The glow in his implants was dim now, but every line of his stance spoke of control and readiness, so he could start again at any moment, and none of them would survive. The message was clear. Earth did not need an army in the room to win. The station's grand chamber was silent, except for the faint hum of the air systems and the low moans of the defeated mercenaries. The delegates were still seated or frozen where they stood, as if afraid that moving too soon might trigger another display of human power. Rook stood beside Ambassador Cortez once more, visor hanging loosely at his side, his breathing steady and controlled. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of a closing verdict. "You all have a choice. Continue down your path to war, or remember what you saw here today and choose peace." Her words were simple, but they carried an unspoken edge. Peace was not a gift. It was an opportunity they were being allowed to keep. The two rival leaders, who had moments earlier been prepared to throw the galaxy into chaos, now avoided each other's gaze. Neither one dared challenge the ambassador. In their minds, the battle they had just witnessed was no longer about one human defeating a dozen mercenaries. It was about what that meant for the armies Earth could field if provoked. If this was a single Guardian, what would 100 look like? 1,000? The station's security forces finally moved to escort the captured mercenaries away. The leader, still shaken, didn't fight them. His eyes stayed locked on Rook until he was dragged from sight. The image of the silent, glowing human burned into his memory. Within hours, recordings of the battle began circulating beyond the station. Security footage showed a black-armored figure moving with impossible speed, disarming and disabling attackers in seconds. Clips slowed the fight to reveal precision strikes, predictive dodges, and raw strength that shattered alien armor as if it were glass. The footage went viral across the networks of a dozen worlds. Military analysts dissected every movement. Civilians debated whether it was real or some carefully staged Terran propaganda. But among soldiers, mercenaries, and fleet commanders, there was no debate. They understood what they were seeing. The Guardian was not a rumor anymore. He was fact. And Earth had more by the next day. Fleets of the two rival empires began quietly pulling back from the contested border systems. Officially, they claimed it was for logistical resupply. Unofficially, no one wanted to test whether more. Humans were already waiting. Back aboard her shuttle, Ambassador Cortez stood by the viewport as the station shrank into the distance. She didn't smile. "They'll talk about this for years," she said softly. Rook, standing behind her, watched the stars drift past. His voice was calm, almost indifferent. "Good. Let them." The shuttle's engines flared, cutting a streak of light through the darkness as it carried them toward home. Behind them, the galaxy whispered the same story, over and over, in a dozen languages. Earth sent one man. act and ended a war before it began.